So when I was a child, money really confused me. I did not understand how you could give someone a piece of paper and in exchange get a mango smoothie, or whatever it is that you were looking to buy. I concluded that this money thing was magic paper. And with this magic paper, I then came to realize that it was magic because of what it represented, a promise. You see, with money, we believe and trust in the value of that money because other people believe that it is valuable. I can now go into a shop and give them a piece of paper, and you trust that I will accept your magic piece of paper, and I trust that you will accept my magic piece of paper. Why is it that we trust these things? Well, on that promise, we have an institution. If you take out a note in England, you'll see that on that note it says, I promise to pay the bearer the sum of 5, 10, 20 pounds, whatever that sum might be. And back in the day, you could go into a bank and you could give them this note, and then the clerk would, after some rummaging, come back with the equivalent value in gold coins. But now, we don't have that. Now, there is no gold backing up the money. It truly is just magic paper, because now we have something known as fiat currency, as the economists say. But why is it that that still works? Money is valuable because we value it. It is valuable because we trust in what it represents. Behind that, we have something even more extreme, the institutions. The institutions behind this, we have, say, the Bank of England, and they allow us to have the trust of money and its value so entrenched within our society now that money doesn't actually have a physical form anymore. It exists as a collection of zeros and ones on a server somewhere, so that we can go in, tap, and walk out of the shop with our new book with absolutely no fear that the security guard might rugby tackle us for stealing. But why is it that we trust those institutions? Institutions are just collections of individuals like you and me. Why is it that we trust anyone? Do you trust me? To trust someone is to understand what the risks are, but to go through the transaction anyway. A transaction could be something like borrowing someone's camera or lending your camera to someone. And for that, we use different reference points to help us understand what the risks are and hopefully lower them. So for instance, someone might be a serial camera smasher, or they might have really sticky and gross belongings. You probably want to give them your belongings to look after. These are known as trust signals. There we go. So a trust signal, they allow us to see whether or not we should depend on someone. And the reliability and the relevance of those trust signals depend on how far away someone is from us, where they sit within our circle of trust. And so in your circle of trust, you have your inner circle, you have your middle circle, and you have your outer circle. In your inner circle, you have your friends and your family. In your middle circle, you have your friends of your friends. And then the outer circle is the people who you haven't met yet, the strangers, which I refer to as the stranger danger zone. Now, when we're trying to figure out whether or not to trust someone, it's easy in the inner circles, but when it comes to the stranger danger zone, it becomes far more difficult because we don't have the first-hand, second-hand knowledge, so we have to depend on less reliable, less relevant trust signals to help us understand what are the risks are that we're getting involved into. Things like education, career, nationality, gender, age. Those sorts of things we use when trying to inform decisions, like, should I hire you? Should I trust you to vote? Or should I trust you to rent an apartment from me? But just how reliable are those old forms, those classic forms of trust signals in the world that we exist in today? Let's take an example. So let's imagine that you're going to buy a book on the internet. And on the internet, you're given a profile of someone. So we're going to take 4 dimensions of an individual that are using these classic signals of trust. So I'm going to share with you their job, their qualification, their accommodation, and their age. So the job that the individual has is that they are unemployed. So the individual is unemployed. Their qualifications, well, they don't have too many. In fact, they actually have none. And when it comes to their accommodation, they are living in style. They actually live with their mum. Has its perks. She still cooks for you. But we'll forgive them for this because they are only 12 years old. Do you trust this individual? Would you buy a book from this individual? Probably not. But what about if I were to tell you instead that this person had a status of eBay power seller, and they had 100% positive feedback, and they had thousands of reviews that said, you know what, this book is incredible. I do hope that you would trust this person, because this was me. This was me when I was 12. I'm still living at home with my mother. Please don't judge me. And so I was there, and at the age of 12, I'd set up a business selling a book that taught people how to play a popular video game really, really well. Like, really well. Like, you could be a boss at this game if you read my book. That's what one of the reviews said. My favorite. And so, with that, I was able to generate a source of income. It was able to unlock opportunity for me that previously would have been prevented because I would have been judged by the fact that I was living with my mother and I was 12 years old. And so what we now have are these more reliable and more relevant forms of trust signal that we're able to use. And because of that, we're able to open up a whole host of new opportunities. But it does call into question the validity of the old trust signals. Before, when we're judging people by their age, their career, their nationality, their gender, etc., we live in a world that excludes far more people and doesn't judge them based on the quality of their work. So taking another, for instance, the other side of the story, the buyer side, rather than the seller side. One of my friends was desperately looking for a house sitter. She was about to go on holiday, but unfortunately she asked her friends, she asked her family, and absolutely no one was available to help her out. And so she had to venture into the stranger danger zone. The stranger danger zone online looks slightly different to the stranger danger zone here, in the physical world. Because online, your stage is not your immediate community, it's the entire world. Your stage is now global. And so to draw it a bit more to scale, the stranger danger zone looks a bit more like that. And your central heart is more in the middle, far smaller. When it came to the stranger danger zone, being this large, some of you may be worried, but that's what opportunity looks like. My friend had a host of far more people that she could look into and then find her perfect house sitter. She could go onto websites like trustedhousesitters.com and then see whether or not there was anyone that she would trust to look after and feed her pet iguana. And lo and behold, there was a perfect match. There are a whole host of these services now that are allowing you to access services that are far more bespoke and have far richer and far more reliable trust signals that you can then use to determine whether or not you want to go through with the transaction. Whether it's trying to find good investment opportunities or potentially trying to find someone to teach you how to play an instrument or do graphic design for you. Or quite simply, if you want someone's dog to borrow, you can then go online and find someone's puppy to play with, when you really need that as a form of therapy. So with this as the new stage on which that we're operating on, how do we use these trust signals to have a seismic effect on our society? How is it that we drive adoption? You see, a trust signal is very similar to money. A trust signal becomes valuable because we value it. I know the dog is very cute. And so if it is that we collectively buy into this idea of these trust signals, then what we'll be able to do is carve out a far more meritocratic world. A world in which we do not use the old proxies because we have far better ones, far more relevant ones, far ones that are closer to the inner part of our trust circle. With that, we'll be able to stop excluding people and biasing our opinion through things such as the old proxies of education, career, location, and instead use the far more relevant ones, the ones that judge someone based on the quality of their work. There's a hidden value to doing this, and it's one that you don't actually realize exists until you take the leap of faith, and that's the kindness of strangers. At the beginning of this year, I became an Airbnb host, and I was terrified. I was letting these strangers into my house, and the worries went through my mind of my apartment burning down, my books being vandalized, or my plants being murdered. And you laugh, but the plant that I had that I was particularly concerned about was my palm tree called Spike. And here's a picture of Spike. Fortunately, Spike is still alive, and the guests I've had to date have been absolutely wonderful. And the very first guest that I had, we ended up having a conversation over dinner, and we were exchanging stories. And one of the stories that I shared was about how when I was a little boy, my dad would call me Jam instead of Jamie, because I used to love having loads of strawberry jam on my toast. I used to just cake it on. And the day that my guest checked out, I came home, and sitting on my kitchen table, waiting for me, was this little pot of strawberry jam. And then I looked up at my whiteboard, and on the whiteboard, I saw something. The previous night, I told the guests that my favorite animal was a fox, and that my New Year's resolution, which I'm sort of sticking to, is to learn French, to get better at French beyond my GCSE. And there, waiting for me on the whiteboard, was a hand-drawn picture of a fox that said, "Thank you so much for hosting us so well." With every guest that I host, with every leap of faith that I take into the stranger danger zone, I'm reminded of the kindness of strangers, and it's being powered by these richer signals of trust. Every single gesture of small pots of strawberry jam, to every single hand-drawn fox. If we as a collective take a leap of faith and buy into these new trust signals and apply them to multiple areas of our lives that previously we weren't, you will uncover a world of far more choice. You will unlock a world of far greater opportunity from people all over. And you'll discover that the world that we live in, it is far kinder than it is scary. Thank you.